Hey, I'm so glad to see you today. I hope you know that I'm praying for you. I'm so grateful that I get to follow God with you. You know, we're up to more than 10,000 people who receive daily hope every day now. I hope you know that you're not alone. You might feel like a small person in a big country, but there's a big movement of God that you're a part of. And even though 10,000 isn't a lot compared to 340 million, it's enough for God to work with. Listen to Zechariah 8, verse 6. Quote, "This is what the Lord of heaven's armies says. All this may seem impossible to you now, a small remnant of God's people. But is it impossible for me, says the Lord of heaven's armies?" I just love that verse because I have moments of great faith when I look in the eyes of the young people that we're raising here in Indiana. They are on fire for the Lord. And when I hear generous people being all in to raise up that generation, and I look at our staff and I look at our volunteers and I know that people are praying, and it's like, wow, I see this revival that we're a part of spreading from Brownsburg to Avon, spreading to Carmel and Fishers. We really could see revival all around the Indianapolis metro area. And if God would do the same thing in Minneapolis, where a church is asking to use our tools, a church of 20,000 no less, in Phoenix, a church of 30,000, in Pennsylvania, a church of 30,000, we could state by state start to see revival that actually changes our land. And I just love this verse. All this may seem impossible to you now, a small remnant of God's people. But is it impossible for me? And the answer is no, it's not. So can I just remind you, we saw 6 things that are needed for revival. One of them was endurance, because all these great awakenings, they happened over decades. And often, for example, the first Great Awakening, the start date officially is the 1730s. But those leaders had been raised up in the 1710s. Then they were in their 20s when they kicked off the Great Awakening. So it might take 20 years for us to see the revival we're praying for. It might take 30, 40, 50. Some of us may see it from heaven looking back, but we'll know that's what I invested my life in. Maybe we'll see it in our lifetime. I hope. I'm seeing sparks in our lifetime, but it's going to take perseverance. It's going to take faithfulness in prayer. It's going to take bold preaching and us raising up the next generation to be bold Bible preachers. It's going to take generosity, and the more God has given to you, the more generosity matters for you. It matters for all of us. But I'm telling you guys, I used to, I was taught if you tithe 10%, God blesses the other 90%, and you get to use it on yourself. I found it to be true. God has always blessed the 90%. He's blessed me beyond what I ever could have imagined, but God's been convicting me lately. Does that 90% also belong to Him? Now, He wants me to enjoy life and take care of my family, but do I really need to use all that 90% for myself? Can I make it that I give 20% to God? Or could some of you give 90% to God and live well off the other 10%? God knows, that's between you and Him. But if we're going to see revival, it's going to take persistence through suffering. It's going to take longevity over decades. It's going to take raising up the next generation. It's going to take faithful prayers. It's going to take serious generosity financially from each of us. God says, all this may seem impossible to you now, a small remnant of God's people, but is it impossible for me? It's not. And young people, I want to encourage you especially, God has His hand on you to use you to be agents of revival in your generation. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow.